Everybody, welcome to our monthly digital dealer exclusive sewing embroidery project. This month we are featuring the October 31st bench buddy. We're getting ready for fall, even though it's still very hot outside. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to take a sip of water here so that I can get started. We are going to work through making this October 31st little bench buddy. This pillow fits the 8x8-inch square pillow form, and the pillow has a flange on it. So the stripe that you see on the project is actually a flange. The pillow form does not go out to the outer edges. It's only along the polka dotted portion of this project. Now, so there we're going to do embroidery first, and then we will switch everything over to sewing, and we will sew. Only the center of this pillow is embroidered. So just the October 31st portion is embroidered. The rest of it will be assembled on the sewing machine. We need a 5x7 embroidery hoop. Okay. So in the world of Bernina, that is your large oval. Okay. The stabilizers that we're going to be using, we're going to be hooping a wash away sticky back. So if you've been here a while, you know that we are lovers of OESD embroidery stabilizers. So we're going to be using one hooping of Aqua Mesh Plus. And then we're going to need some wash away topping. So that's stitch 2-0. We're going to use that on top of the leather so that we can keep our stitching from wanting to sink into the leather. You will need a 5.5-inch square of fusible backing or fusible woven lining. And we're going to need just 2 thread colors. We're going to need orange and white. The orange just needs to be whatever color you would like to use on your piece of glitter. Okay, so find a color that you like or match, or maybe you don't want an orange spider. You could easily change this out for purple glitter and replace this with a purple spider if that's more your Halloween vibe. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and iron the fusible backing to the wrong side of the 31 fabric. So that is the 5.5-inch square of the white with black dot. And we're going to iron our fusible backing to it. We're going to go ahead and hoop a piece of Aqua Mesh Plus into our hoop. Now remember, with any sticky stabilizer, there is a piece of, one side of the stabilizer has a piece of paper on it and the other side is the actual stabilizer. We always want to hoop this with the paper up. Because the paper's on it, it likes to curl. It can be a little stiff. So I'll sometimes kind of put it in the hoop and maybe work it around, kind of find the shape of my hoop so that when I go to put my inner ring in, it won't be quite as hard. It'll kind of stay where I want it to stay. You should always start at the top of your hoop and work towards the hoop screw. Okay, this is where you're going to get the most spread. So starting here and then trying to work up to this point, nothing's going to move up here. Nothing's going to stretch open for you to be able to get in. So you should start at the top and work towards the hoop screw, and then we're going to give that a tighten. Okay. And then I always like to push my inner ring just about a 1/16 of an inch past the outer ring. That's just going to lift this up off my free arm so that only this is rubbing on my free arm and not any of the other parts of the hoop. Those of us with Berninas and our stainless steel free arms, we don't want to limit the amount of scratching that's going to happen. And then I'm going to take a pin, a seam ripper, something along the lines that has a sharp end on it, and I am going to score the paper, just the paper. We don't want to go all the way through, and we're going to peel off the protective paper to reveal the sticky. Okay, so okay. Oh yeah, glow-in-the-dark thread would be good because all the main embroidery on this project is white. So the white glow-in-the-dark thread, the Isatex that we have from Isacord, would be really cool in this as well, because that would, all the decorative stitching around the 31 and then the word October would glow in the dark. I hadn't thought about that one. We're going to open up the crosshair design on the machine, and we're going to stitch the crosshairs directly into the stabilizer. In my machine, I have white thread. In the bobbin of my machine, I also have white thread, and we're going to stitch the crosshairs. The crosshairs are in your embroidery design download, but I highly recommend that you save these crosshairs to your machine so you have them for everything. They don't have to just be used with Kimberbell designs. Anytime that you are trying to center something and get something in the hoop that you're not planning to actually physically hoop, these crosshairs are going to save your life at being able to get yourself straight. And especially if it's a product or an item that you can't really mark very well, this is going to help. All right. Now that we have our crosshairs, let's talk a little bit about leather. Okay? The embroidery leather. One most important part, do not touch an iron directly to this leather. Okay? You'll be very sad. You always want to cover it up with a pressing cloth before you touch an iron to it, and honestly, I would iron from the back with a cover, with a pressing cloth or a scrap piece of fabric on top. Okay? This is an 8-inch square, yep, of embroidery leather. We are going to mark on the wrong side of the leather in the center. So 4 inches up, draw a line, 4 inches over and draw a line. And this is what we're going to match to this crosshair. So I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to find my halfway point. And I'm going to line up this line with that, and my horizontal line with the horizontal. And I'm going to peel this up and make sure that that also lines up. And then we're going to tack this down to the hoop. And then the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of aqua, this is stitch 2-0, or a wash away topping, and we are going to place it on top of the leather. I'm going to use the Aqua Mesh Plus sticky to hold it in place, or you can use some paper tape, Kimberbell paper tape as well, but the Aqua Mesh will hold it down. You always want to make sure that you either tape or pin your toppings in place, because as this starts to embroider, it will start to shrink and draw up. And to keep it from getting wrapped around your embroidery foot, you always want to hold it in place. So if I didn't have tape around, you could, sometimes if I'm doing like a large towel or something like that and tape doesn't want to stick to the fuzzy of the towel and so on and so forth, I'll just take a couple pins. I'll pin through my product and my hoop and my stabilizers out in an area where I know that my embroidery foot is not going to go, and that's just enough to kind of hold it so that these don't want to pull up and wrap around the foot. We are ready to embroider now. So we're going to now open up the design that is for your pillow, so the October 31st design. We are going to run the first color stop, which is the spider webs, directly into the stabilizer, into your leather. Let me get my hoop here. All right, now we're going to run the spider web detail. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Please feel free, if you have any questions, to drop them in the chat and I will gladly answer them. It doesn't necessarily have to be about this project. We're going to be here for a little bit, so we might as well chat about anything you'd like to chat about. And so the reasoning behind this Stitch 2.0 on top is because the leather is kind of, for lack of a better word, porous, but it's spongy. And so what would happen with some of this straight stitching is it would basically sink into the leather and not really sit on top of it and kind of almost disappear. So this is the reason behind using this topping. All right. Next up, we're still staying in white. We are going to run the placement line for our fabric. Good morning, Miss Betty. We are stitching out the number 31 here. Been a Kimberbell focused weekend for me and the rest of this week. I've spent the last few days prepping for our harvest table event with Kimberbell, and I've been filming videos and prepping for both our virtual and in-person sessions that are starting on Friday. Here bright and early this morning and finished a couple projects and have one more video to film. Okay, now that our placement line is stitched, we are going to go ahead and applique our fabric. So like normal applique, we're going to place our fabric right side up, covering up the placement line that we just stitched. And then you can, if you would like, take a piece of tape or two and tape that fabric in place. Just want to make sure that I'm high enough there at the top. Just like that. And now we're going to run the tack down. So it's going to restitch the same thing that it just stitched. Yes, Badge Master would work just fine. I wouldn't get in a habit of using a lot of Badge Master constantly, but for this project, I mean, it would be fine if you didn't have anything. Excuse me. Sorry. It is going to nicely double stitch this line for us so that we are super secure when we go to trim around the outside edge. Once your fabric is appliqued in place, we're going to remove the item from the machine. Okay, don't take it out of the hoop. We're just going to take it off the machine, and we are going to carefully trim the fabric as close to these lines as we can without cutting the leather, your film. We just want to cut just the fabric. Careful not to cut our stitching. I'll start with the easy one, the number 1. It's all nice straight edges for the most part. Now let's change back and forth between 2 different sets of scissors, depending upon. Don't cut that. Let's get rid of this. The area in which I'm cutting, a little tight there for the applique scissors. Rotate the hoop. The hoop doesn't have to stay in one direction. Rotate it so that whatever works best for you to allow you to get a hold of it. I also like to put a little tension on the piece that I'm cutting off. That kind of helps to hold this up and can help me get a nice, tight, clean cut as well. There is a decorative stitch that is going to go around the edge of this fabric. Okay. Take your time. all trimmed up, you can a couple more just little snips right here in this corner. We are going to now applique our spider in place. Oh Lord have mercy. I am so sorry. I am struggling today. I am not gonna lie. We are going to change our thread to the color you plan to do your spider in. Okay. And then we're going to work through appliquing the glitter for the spider. Changed out to orange thread. We're going to run a placement line, maybe. Okay. And then we're going to applique our glitter fabric. Now the big thing to remember is before you applique glitter, you peel off the protective plastic, okay? We want to get rid of this. It's not the end of the world if you accidentally forget to and you embroider through it. It's not a problem. You have a very tiny circle. Like you could probably make 50 bats. Oh my goodness, 50 spiders out of this little tiny piece of glitter. But I'm gonna come to the corner and I'm gonna use the smallest part as possible to give me leftovers to be able to use for another project. So this is something else that if you have a little tiny piece of glitter left over from something, you could use that. Okay. I'm going to take that off the machine. So you can see it's a very small little circle. We're going to trim away the glitter. Now here's my secret, okay? Kind of hold your fingernail on the circle and pull the glitter. I didn't even need to use a pair of scissors. He's trimmed, okay? But you want to hold your stitching, so just don't rip. Because if this has not been stitched with like a triple stitch or anything along that lines, you may end up pulling out your stitching. But I mean, that's just, trying to get scissors around something that big, that little, okay? We are going to return this hoop to the machine now, and we are going to stitch the detail of the spider. And then we're going to change out to our white thread and stitch the decorative stitch around our numbers. Okay. So first up, let's give our spider some legs. Now he's got legs. I'm going to change out to the thread color that I am going to use for my number decorative stitch. So I'm going back to white, but ultimately this is your pillow. You can do it in any color of your choice. And we're going to stitch. Just a couple of notes. If you've not cut out your black and white stripe yet, one second, let me get this stitching. Okay. Just be conscious of the direction in which you're cutting. She does give you, she does give you a diagram on how she intended you to cut the black and white stripe out of your fat quarter so that you can get your stripes to go left to right on your pillow and not up and down on the border. So just pay attention to that. Yes, the tip on the glitter. Now this is not going to work with OESD sparkle vinyl. It's not going to work with leather, anything along that lines, but in Harvest Table, could you imagine trying to cut into all these little itty bitty crevices? Okay, so that's how you can get a clean, like there's still a little piece. I'll just tell you now what I did for Harvest Table. But like there is a small little piece right here. I can snip it, and then you can take a pair of tweezers and just pull. Now again, this is done with a triple stitch around the outside edge. So you don't want to do this, or want to do it more careful or cautiously if your design is just stitched down with a single stitch. Okay, so last month was a bonus month for Kimberbell, and we had the give a dog a bone and give a cat a fish little zipper pouches. And then the bonus design that month was the Santa cinch sacks. I filmed the Santa cinch sack instructional video. We will have it up here online soon. But here I have them while the machine is running for the next few minutes. Here they are. So your Santa cinch sacks, you have two designs that you received for your bonus month. And there they are. If I was using glow in the dark, would I use it only for the last round? Yes, I would only use glow in the dark for your decorative spider webs and just for this decorative stitch here. And then that would be the only place. I mean, you can use it for your applique and whatnot. Then you may see a little bit of a straight line. It will maybe help fill in, but not necessary to be using it for your tack down. And these cinch sacks were all made, see in here, were all made in the embroidery hoop. Now for me, at this point in the design, the last two color stops are the same color. You've got the straight stitch and then the word October. You have these two lines here and the word October in the middle. I'm going to do them both in white. So on my machine, I'm going to activate the single color embroidery option, which on an older Bernina is going to be the little paintbrush. And on a newer Bernina, it's going to be the icon that looks like a stoplight to a all yellow stoplight. Usually you can find it right there at the bottom of your screen once the machine has started embroidering. And all that's going to do is it's going to not have the machine pause when it finishes stitching this color stop. It's immediately going to come back and start the next color stop. and I don't have to stand here and hit go. So I could have turned that on technically when I started the cover stitch of my number if I wanted everything to be white. And now the machine will just run until all of the color stops are complete. Now, you don't want to turn this on if you weren't planning on stitching this all in the same color. So just be conscious of that. Almost there. Few more letters. While that's stitching, I am going to get out my orange pop ruler, if you have one. We want the square set of orange pop rulers, and we want the 6.5-inch square. The size that we're going to want. If you don't have an orange pop and you have a 6.5-inch square regular ruler, that's fine too. Yes, anyone working on Cup of Cheer or thinking about getting started, doing your prep work, all that good stuff? We're not quite there yet at the store. As usual, I'm a little behind. Here is our finished design. While it's still here in the hoop, I'm going to go ahead and try to trim up a couple of these little tiny thread tails. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers to hold on to them while I cut. If you kind of put a little tension on it, you can get it to cut closer to the project. You are going to remove the topping. For the most part, it's all perforated. You can just grab a hold of it and pull. gonna use a pair of tweezers to kind of get in here and get as much as I can. I'm still gonna have to put it in water to get rid of all of it, but if I can get rid of a majority of it, and then once you have that cleaned up, we're going to take the item out of the hoop and we're going to trim up the excess in the background. Okay. So while I do that, you guys don't need to see me trim. You can, if you're not stitching, just and ultimately, you know, we're going to trim this square down, so, you know, most of this is going to go away, but we want to get rid of a majority of it so that it's not in our way when we do go to cut this. We're not fussing with it, trying to get it to lay flat and everything. Okay. Just give me a moment. I'm also going to go ahead and break down my machine. I'm going to break it down to sewing. Change out my presser foot to a 1/4 inch presser foot as well while I am at it. Okay. There it is. There's the front, and you can see I just kind of went around the back as well. There it. You need a 2 border pieces. 2 of them are 1.5 by 6.5, and 2 of them are 1.5 by 8.5. Let me find a 1/4 inch foot somewhere in this mess of stuff I've got going on. Okay. Ah, you know what I did? I just cut the wrong ones. Darn it. Oh, well, I'll have to cut that again in a minute. See, that's what I get for doing too many things at one time. Told you it wasn't my day. Struggling over here. Amy is struggling. All right, we'll come back to that in a moment. Hey, it's not just you. It happens to me too. But fortunately, I do have extra fabric. Here, I will cut them. Okay. So we need, out of your black and white polka dot, not your black and white stripe, I need 2 6.5s and 2 8.5s. correct? Yes, 6.5 and 8.5. All right, let me get a ruler. No, I'm coming back to trim with the orange pop in just 1 second. I know you think I've... No, I haven't trimmed with it. I'm coming back to it. 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, and I'm only going to cut through the bottom stack. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Okay. I wanted to get that ready. And then our flange, the black and white stripe, we need 2 8.5s and 2 10.5s. So there's my 8.5s, and my 10.5s are what I cut when I didn't mean to cut it. I picked the wrong fabric up, so here's one. Cut another one in a moment. All right. Get my fabric here. So I need a 1.5 by 10.5. All right, now we'll go back to the orange pop. Orange pop rulers are what we use to square up things, okay? I'm actually going to work from the wrong side of this project because if you remember, we marked center on it, correct? So I have these lines that are lined up, and I did a really good job of lining it up in the hoop so that they line up with that crosshair, okay? And so if you used everything to line up to that crosshair, this is going to be easier to do. Otherwise, we have to do it from the front and we've got to visualize, or you need to find centers. So you could fold your square in half and, you know, kind of crease it and find the center again if you wanted. The orange pop has 2 sets. We've got a square set and a rectangular set. Each set has 3 sizes. So there's 4.5, 6.5, 8.5 in the squares. I'm actually going to pull out the 6.5, and you may see there are 1, it's marked, and 2, there are some arrows pointing at center. So I'm going to get those arrows to line up with my center markings. Okay, so if you can see, I've got this one is lining up to here, that one's lining up to here, and these arrows are lining up to this one. Okay. Now, if this is a little narrow for you to hold on to, because we're actually going to be trimming to the inside, you know what, while I'm doing this, let me grab a rotating mat because I'm not on the corner of a table. Normally I would do this on a corner of a table so that I could just rotate around the corner. I don't know where my mat's at, but I have a smaller mat that at least I can rotate the smaller mat. So, lined up my arrows. If this is hard for you to, or a little skinny for you to hold on to, because we're going to be cutting on the inside of these marks, take the next biggest orange pop and put it around it. And this is going to give you a larger surface to hold on to. Okay? I'm going to take my rotary cutter. It doesn't matter what style rotary cutter. The corners are kind of notched or extended so that we can go past where we need. So I'm going to start down here and I'm going to cut up. I'm going to come to this side. I'm going to start in the corner and I'm going to cut beyond. So I'm cutting until my stops. I'm then going to rotate my mat carefully so that nothing moves, so that I can cut here and here. Okay. And one more. I don't think I rotated as far as I thought I did. Told you I have a few loose marbles today. And then you should be able to pick that out and you be centered inside of your 6.5 inch square. Okay. All right. Let's get this mat out of the way. The next steps that we're going to do is we are going to attach a 6.5 inch white with black polka dot to top and bottom, left and right, your choice. Doesn't really matter which direction you start. So I'm going to do this, and then I will attach this the other direction. Now I'm not going to use pins because this is leather. They are going to hold holes, okay? So we're going to put this right sides together. If you can just hold on to it. You don't even have to clip it, but I'm going to clip it in place so that I can get over to my machine. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch. All right. Let's see if I got the camera in a good place. Oh, I did. Pretty good. Got my 1/4 inch foot on my machine. I left the same white thread in the top and in the bobbin. I did not change over to like cotton or anything like that. I'm just going to use the same stuff. Going to go to the iron and I'm going to carefully press this, and then I'm going to fold this back. You can finger press it, or I am going to put a piece of fabric over it and give it another press. Okay, so let me head over to the iron, which I don't have on the table right this second, so I'm going to do it off camera. Just make sure that you cover up your leather before you set an iron on it. Okay, there we go. Now our 8.5 is going here and on the bottom. And then we're going to repeat this step with the black and white stripe fabric. I'm pressing the seams away from center when I iron. Okay. We're gonna go iron. And then we'll come back and attach the stripe border. So this square should be, once you get the white border on, should be an 8.5 inch square. Okay. There he is. If you think it's a little, you're not sure if it's the right size or anything like that, you could break out your 8.5 inch orange pop and do any trimming that you need. We're now going to repeat the process, sewing in the same order that we sewed the other border strips on. So I started on the side, so I'm going to start on the sides again and then do top and bottom. Okay. Press again, making sure that you don't touch your iron to your project, to your leather. And two, you want to be careful that when you are ironing leather and things along that lines, that it heats it up and it can stretch. So you want to make sure that you're careful with pulling on it or manipulating that leather while it is warm. Okay, now we're going to add black and white stripe to the top and the bottom of this project. Backstitch anywhere. These are the last two seams. These are the seams that I would backstitch. Lined up here. All right, one more iron. Press away from center again. The next step is to be, once we get this ironed, is we're going to make our backing. There it is. Your backing is, we're going to hem the edges. So you have two pieces of backing that are 7 by 10 and a half, I believe. 1 second. Yes. So the question is it possible for the dots on your eye to be, on your one to be crooked? Yes. If you don't put this piece of fabric on, if you don't put that applique square on straight, you could throw off your dots. So be conscious if that's the look you want. So just be conscious of when you're appliquing this fabric down that things are the way you want them to look once they're trimmed away. So if you were using a stripe here, you would want to make sure that those stripes were going in the direction that you wanted them to go when you trimmed it away. Okay. We are going to take your backing pieces, okay? So they are 10 inches tall, 7 inches wide, 10.5 inches tall. Yes, their dots are not straight dots. So Kimberbell's dots are a scatter dot. They're not in a line. Okay. So 7, 10. So if you, depending on how you wanted your stripes to go, you may want them cut differently than the way they are currently marked. You are going to hem one long edge on each rectangle. We are going to turn them up 1/4 of an inch twice. Okay. So there is a couple of things that you can do to try to make this easier on your fingers than trying to turn this at 1/4 and then turn this at 1/4 of again. Okay. If you take your ruler and a marking utensil, and I'm going to mark 1/2 inch up. Okay. Which is pretty much going to be that, for me, it's going to line up to that line on the fabric. I'm going to, you can fold that to that mark, okay, and then fold again, or if you measure 1 inch up, okay, so I'm going to measure 1. It's pretty much going to be the top of that line right there. If I fold my first line to the 1 inch mark, okay, that's 1/2 inch, right? And then I can come back, open this up, and fold that in, and that's 1/4. So there's my 1/4 and 1/4. Okay, so let me fold this to the 1 inch mark, and then I'll show you again. So I'm all about trying to make it easier. So I'll show you up close here in 1 second. Let me get it ironed. So ultimately your first turn is going to be 1/2 inch. Okay. All right. So here is, I marked 1 inch, I folded this up, this is 1/2 inch. Okay. Now all I need to do is really tuck the raw edge in down to that fold. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to press that. So there was no burning my fingertips. I almost don't even need to iron it, but I will. And then we're going to top stitch this. Okay. So you're going to, and you only need to do this on one edge of each rectangle for your backing. Okay. So both edges here are folded. I'm going to come to my machine. I'm going to leave white thread in. Okay. I know that I've folded a quarter. I'm actually going to sew from the right side of my fabric, and I'm going to follow the 1/8 inch mark in my presser foot. I have a 1/4 inch foot on, so the inside of this toe is 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to sew from the right side so that I can, the stitching always looks a little better. Let's get the needle threaded here. The back stitch at the beginning. Turn it over every once in a while and just make sure everything stayed folded. I'm not going to pin, I don't pin it. I can feel with my fingers if it's folded or not. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and feed the next one in. There I am. 1/4 inch double hem, okay, is finished on our project. We're going to take our pillow, we're going to turn it over, okay, so we'll take our right side, our pillow top is right side up, and we're going to be putting our backing right sides together with it. We are going to, sorry, wrong screen. Okay, I want to put my top piece on first, line up the top edge here, and then I'm going to take my bottom piece and put it over top. Okay. And we're going to sew all the way around this project at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. So you can see. It's like this. I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I'm going to make sure that I backstitch over where my flaps overlap, just because that is a point of stress when you're stuffing in your pillow form. I'm going to come to the corner. You can sew off and then rotate, or you can rotate. I need one more stitch. Coming back to an overlap here, I'm going to back stitch there. Rotate my corner. Back to the beginning. Take it out. We're going to trim the corner. Okay, we're going to get rid of, your standard corner bulk, so that when we turn this right side out, we get pretty corners. Pretty standard. I trim diagonally across the corner, and then from the corner out, trimming some of that bulk. So you can see here, graphic wise, what I'm doing. And the reason we do this is because just because we trim the corner and we turn it right side out, you're still trying to cram all of this into that corner. So we reduce that bulk as well. And then we're going to turn the pillow right side out. Through the overlap in the back. I'm going to grab my point and press or a corner turner. I'm going to use my point and press to get my corner out. I'm using the smaller end, and I'm not poking right into the corner. I'm actually kind of doing a little rainbow in the corner, starting on the one side and kind of working around to the other to help manipulate that fabric. Now, the reason we laid the backing fabric the way that we did with the bottom underneath is so that when we turn this right side out, the overlap is, so this is the right side of our pillow. And this way on the back, if this wants to poke out, you're not going to be like seeing a hole directly into your pillow. This is going to keep that nice and covered. I'm going to go to the iron. We're going to give this a press. Nice and flat. Because the next thing that we're going to do is create the flange. So we need this to be super flat and right along the edge. Again, as you're ironing, make sure you don't touch your iron to your leather. Okay. So I'm really just ironing the outside edge of that stripe fabric and my backing. Just want to make sure everything stays where it belongs when I go to stitch in the ditch. Okay. All right. We are going to come now, and we're actually going to sew a line right between where the border stripe meets the dot. Okay, we're just going to sew a straight stitch. Now I do like to put a couple pins in this so that I can make sure that my backing stays where it belongs. So I'm just going to kind of put a few pins around between where I'm going to stitch, just to kind of hold everything in place. Just like that. And then we're going to go to the machine. I'm going to use white thread, and I'm going to use my foot number 10. This is a Bernina. Foot number 10 is a edge stitch, or what we also call a stitch in the ditch foot. So it has this guide that stops before the needle that we're going to follow in the path of that seam. So you can use 10, 10C, 10D. It's completely up to you. I'm going to use foot 10 today because I'm just doing a straight stitch. I don't need my stitch width to be anything but a 0. Okay. I'm actually going to start not in a corner. And I'm going to get myself configured here. There we go. I'm not going to back stitch because I will stitch over top of where I started when I return. And I'm just going to sew, keeping this guided in the ditch. You may need to move your needle position to the left depending on how fluffy this fold is, things along that line. So don't stress if you have to. You're not doing anything wrong. Our goal is to stitch in the ditch and make it as invisible as possible. Because the ditch is actually on the left, so the seam allowance has been folded up this way, so this side is thicker or taller. That's why I've actually moved my needle position one position to the left so that it can stitch truly down in the ditch. And I'll give you a close-up when I get all the way back around. We do carry the 8-inch pillow forms that are designed to fit inside this pillow. I believe our marketing department has put a link in there for you directly to the pillow form. Kimberbell actually has, I think it's 3 collections of what they call bench buddies. So these were designed to be, we have an 8-inch pillow, this one, that's a bench buddy. We also have the rectangular, the 5 by 9.5s, that are bench buddies as well. They're designed to coordinate with all of her larger bench pillows. That's why they're called bench buddies. So they could, they also could be what we call bowl fillers. So if you have a large bowl on the table, tiered trays, things like that, you can use these smaller things to coordinate with your bench pillows that you may have from Kimberbell. Last corner, I left my tail there so I knew where I started. I'm going to come through, do a little back stitch, and cut my thread. Then cut my thread tail. So you can see you've stitched around the back, and on the front you really can't see where that stitching was unless you really pull back on that border. So what we're going to do is you will take your 8-inch pillow, stick it in the inside of this little guy, and you have your bench buddy pillow. Let me see if I have an 8-inch pillow here. Now, I will tell you, it is easier to turn the pillow inside out, at least one flap inside out. Push that in. I have my threads on the back I need to trim here. And then take this and flip it right side out while you push the pillow in. Now, obviously take the plastic off or your pillow is going to be scrunchy. So see, that's why we do it the way we do it, so that when this pillow sits on the, you don't see that pocket. It's there. There is your bench buddy. There he is. The cute little flange kind of matches all of the Home Sweet Home pillow, the Sweet Land of Liberty pillow, the Merry Christmas Y'all pillow with the embroidered center and the flange on the outside, except this one's just fabric, it's not quilted. I think we answered questions? I think so. All right, yes, it is a quick, fun project. You know, fairly minimal embroidery, great first time project if you haven't done applique or maybe even any sort of leather embroidery. It is a good project for that. Well, I want to thank everybody so much for joining me today, and I look forward to you sharing your bench buddies with us as soon as you have them finished. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next month for our, what's next month? September. It's an apron, but we're going to come up with some other ways to use the design if you're not big into wearing aprons. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.